My name is Dr. Eric Johnson, Executive Director of University Park Alliance. I want to welcome everybody out tonight. Let me start out by saying UPA is pleased to present and host a series featuring world-class urban thinkers. The idea behind the series, I recognize some of the faces from last year. The idea behind the speaker series is really to bring to Akron ideas, creative approaches, strategies related to building a strong core as it relates to transforming the community, in particular Akron and Northeast Ohio. The series provides a platform for the exploration of ideas to strengthen the innovation capacity of our urban centers, creating new investment and jobs. Historically, cities have been the root of economic transformation in our cities. Many would argue that that trend is headed back towards the cities. So the conversations we have as a part of the Urban Innovators Speaker Series is all about bringing those ideas to Akron. The idea of University Park, as many will know, is centered around the 50 blocks around the University of Akron. And little did I know, after looking at analysis earlier today, that University Park is the dead center of Akron. We've been talking about the core, but when we actually looked at the information over the last couple of days and today, we are dead center in terms of the core of Akron. So I want to give special thanks to the Chamber, University of Akron, which are our major partners, Western Reserve Public Media, and the Akronists for their support. Let me just recognize a few special guests, in particular Max Blackman from Senator Sherrod Brown's office. Council President Marco. Max is everywhere, man. I think he's following us. City Council President Marco Somerville is here. Councilman Jeff Fesco, sorry. And I need to recognize Tony O'Leary, UPA Board Chairman, Brett Trier, Chairman of the UPA Urban Development Committee and Board Member, and of course, Miss Ann Lane Gates. Where are you? Somewhere here. All right. So now I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker for the night. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, David Prim is a principal and senior project director at Tripp Umbach, Global Consultants in Research Strategy and Economic Impact. David leads Tripp Umbach's Market Research, Economic Impact, and Strategic Planning team. Throughout the world, David has supervised over 115 projects and basically serves as a group project manager. The world's largest provider of custom research, Tripp Umbach is known as one of the best in the business. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Hospitality Management from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. David is here this evening to present for the first time to the public UPA's recently commissioned study projecting the return on investment and impact of UPA's core city plan. Please join me in welcoming David. Before David gets started, I just want to do a quick recap on the plan to give you guys an idea to set the sort of context of what we're going to be talking about tonight. You've probably read in the paper, you see it pretty much everywhere. The gist of the plan is centered around the University of Akron, here in the middle. The circles represent what we call legacy neighborhoods surrounding the University of Akron. SUMA here, Main Street, Akron General Children's Hospital. The plan is based on 3 streets, Market, Main, and Exchange. The reason this is, people ask me why I'm so excited about this. Oh, we can't do this in Akron. I hear it all the time, right? Now, the reason I'm really excited about this and hope everybody's starting to come to grips with what it's going to take to compete globally, not only with other cities, but other countries. In this footprint you may have read the first economic impact study that was produced by Tripp Umbach, which basically identified this area, not drilling down in great detail beyond the, let me back up. When you take this area, it's a $2.5 billion impact locally. 8 of the largest employers in Summit County are either in or surrounds University Park. Let me tell you why this is also important. Here's the setup. I'll go to battle with any city with this setup because I think we have it here. Here lies a neighborhood with a brand new school. Here lies a neighborhood with a brand new school, $40 million in investment. Here is the University of Akron. We know the major investments University of Akron has put in. Here lies the STEM school as well. SUMA bordering in this region, this gray area representing the city's Bayou Innovation Corridor, the Austin Bayou Innovation Institute, and the hospital systems, supported in great depth by the Knight Foundation, right? So some people would say, well, we don't have water, we don't have this, we don't have that, but we basically have at its core the representation of a framework we believe sets Akron in a great place for the future. The job at hand for UPA and our partners is to create the great places between these institutions. So we're not about clearance and demolition. We're not about displacing people from the neighborhoods. It's all about stabilizing and bringing this whole entire piece together. So I wanted to give you guys a quick setup for that. And the partners that actually put this together, you probably also read that our main architect planner is Aaron Krantz, Ekstad & Kuhn, which is a Perkins Eastman company, famous for Battery Park, famous for the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. We recently signed an agreement with KUD International. I think people really need to pay attention to that. And in this world today, to have an entity that's got a balance sheet of about $18 billion in terms of revenue annually, with the ability to provide financing and completion guarantees on projects, there's not another city in the country that's got this. So I just want you to know that we are pulling out all the stops, led by our partners in particular, to pull this together. So I just wanted to give you basically the setup, because what David is going to describe, and I'm going to follow up behind David with another piece. And the idea behind these studies is not just to do studies. These are not academic theoretical studies. The idea is to provide the analytical framework and data that will show to everybody that this is doable. So with that, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eric. And thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to present the exciting findings of our study. Eric, it struck me as something that you were saying. I know you wore many hats, but I didn't know you were a Freemason as well, because you were talking about the bricks that were already in place in the established anchor institutions, and you talked about the mortar that can go in around this. And it really is important to understand and view economic impact, especially a development of this nature, building off of the existing infrastructure. And it's really a process of not creating new, but it's building and supporting from what already exists. I have to do a transition here to my particular slide, so bear with me one second. So, projecting the return on investment and economic impact of UPA's Core City Vision Plan. It's a mouthful, I know, and it's a big project. By 2030, there will be transformative changes happening within University Park District in the city of Akron. And that's really what we were presented as an economic impact firm. Eric says, here's our plans. We get the plans from EEK and those folks. And he said, show me what the potential economic impact could be. How many jobs could we create? What type of tax revenue could be developed around these types of projects that are being developed? Before I get too far much further in, I just wanted to remind everybody that my firm, Tripp Umbach, is based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm a Steelers fan, so hopefully there's some Steelers fans in the audience. I didn't bring a terrible towel, but I also wanted to let you know that I'm a Pirates fan. So in that sense, I understand how everybody feels to have a team that... of course, you got to love the Penguins too. But being a Pirates fan, I really understand the plight that perhaps the Browns fans have to go through sometimes. But you still support your team no matter what, and that's why we have a common bond between Pittsburgh and Akron. I think manufacturing cities, where manufacturing was once the primary economic driver driving the industry, our steel production, your tire production, and other aspects. There's a transformation that needs to have to take place, and really what's driving that within the new economy is healthcare, education, and research. And Pittsburgh's experienced some of that, and I think that Akron is aligned with that, with the University of Akron and SUMA and Akron General and the other resources that exist. We do economic impact studies for SUMA Health System. We do economic impact studies for all of the Ohio medical schools. We do work with BioOhio, with NeoMed individually. And I think it's important for you to know that we are a nationally recognized firm with Tripp Umbach, and a lot of the numbers that we project typically are on the conservative side. And I just wanted to preface that before you begin seeing some of the numbers that are out there. So Eric alluded to the first analysis that we did back in April of 2011, and that first study really set the baseline of what the existing anchors meant to the University Park Alliance economy. Amongst those anchor institutions, with the University of Akron, SUMA, Akron General, Akron Children's, and Akron Public, they support over $2.5 billion of economic activity within this area. And that's directly and indirectly. That's not just their operations or their revenue, but those are the other jobs that they create and the other businesses that they support to help support their operations. So on top of that, we look at the return on investment of the economic impact of UPA's Core City Vision Plan. So that comes back to the bricks and the mortar piece, and we really view this as some of the mortar, but it's a pretty substantial piece of mortar, and once it's established, it will be a brick in and of itself. Before we get into some of the numbers, I know you're on the edge of your seat to see what the numbers are, but I just wanted to point out that taking no action will result in a negative impact. Taking no action in terms of economic impact, when you think of economic impact, there's a 0 and there's 100% when it comes to projections. It can be nothing if nothing ever happens. It could be 100% if it's fully realized exactly how our models are projecting it. But doing nothing at all and allowing Akron's economy, or the University Park specifically, population decline, some of the trends that we see that are happening that are consistent with other cities within the Midwest, decreasing population, decreasing levels of educational attainment amongst residents, there will be decline. And so there is a negative impact with taking no action. I think that what we focus on when we talk about capturing economic synergy is it's utilizing the existing resources, and that comes back to the anchor institutions that are involved in this plan and are active participants on the UPA board, and they work daily and sometimes hourly with Eric on kind of framing some of these projects and some of the feedback that Eric and his team receive. So allowing these core employers to do what they do best, providing nationally recognized health care, educating researchers, and as far as polymers are concerned, University of Akron is a nationally recognized, worldwide recognized research institution. The Austin Bioinnovation Institute, attracting research-type jobs to this region. Let them do what they do best, which is create jobs and attract talent to the region. And the next key is also, with the educational institution, with the University of Akron, retaining the talent. So building University Park Alliance into a place where, as they're going to school and as they're being educated at the University of Akron, when they graduate, they don't want to go out to the suburbs, they don't want to move to Cleveland, they don't want to move out of the state. They want to stay in Akron because they experience how great of a place that it is. So that's an advantage that you have within this region. And I think that really the leadership and collaboration aspect is what Eric does best and what his team does best, and that's really helping all of the organizations work together to focus on this common vision. And when he shows that core city vision plan earlier, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of pieces that go involved into the development of that plan. And just getting to that point needs to be commended. And so thank you for that. And it allows everybody here who's a community member that's committed to Akron, because if you weren't committed to Akron, then I don't think that you would be out here today either. So that vision is something that everyone here can build on. And here are the numbers. When we look at economic impact, it's important to realize that this is not just the direct impact of these particular development levels. To develop the economic impact projection of $1.8 billion, that includes the direct economic activity of these firms that would be built, the 919,000 square feet of retail, the 3 million square feet of office space, all of that. That includes their direct economic activity, but also the indirect economic activity that they support. Now, I can probably put the whole room to sleep if I got into a specific economic definition of direct, indirect, and induced. Actually, it's been recommended as a sedative for those who have insomnia, is to listen to economists talk about direct and indirect and induced. But I think the key thing to understand is if you were to imagine a software development company that were to relocate to Akron, if they were attracting people or retaining the students from the University of Akron to work at their firm, then realtors will be busy and they will be working. They are probably working 15-hour shifts, so they hardly cook for themselves. So restaurants will be generating additional economic activity. All of the support that they need to live their daily lives would be combined within the district and maintained. So when we talk about $1.8 billion, that's all of the mortar operating plus the indirect and induced benefits of that. And what Eric can do is show this to state and local taxing authorities to see that there's tax revenue that's involved in that. Not so much in the fact that not all of the organizations will be nonprofit organizations. Even though the existing anchor institutions, the majority are nonprofit organizations, they will be paying taxes as well as the payroll taxes that the employees have to pay. So that's included in that number. And then when you think about the total employment impact, I kind of alluded to the fact that it's direct, indirect, and induced. So it's all of this economic activity being supported by the core city vision plan.
Is this total or is it per year?
This is actually, that's a good question. This would be the annual impact in 2030, correct. Because the next slide that I'll show you is a cumulative, and that's a good question. The residential construction and operations of some of the near-term projects. When we spoke to the stakeholders that were involved in our interview process, we like to speak to people representing all of the anchor institutions and local government officials and such, just to really understand what can happen and is this development going to be realistic. They said that you could show big numbers all day, and you could show the indirect and projections based on the models with the information that you're given, but there has to be short-term gains, and there has to be incremental shows of this is what the economic impact could be if there's a couple of near-term projects. And then also, I would suggest and strongly encourage to Eric and the UPA is as definitive plans for these particular types of projects, as the University Square District mixed use comes to fruition and the feasibility studies and the pro formas are developed to readdress the economic impact so we can update our numbers, so we can make sure that everything is being done on a real-time basis, because I think that is going to generate the momentum that is needed to help continue to the fruition of the full core city vision plan, is to make sure that you have markers along the way demonstrating the economic impact and the types of jobs that are being created.
David, I just want to interject something that what you see on the screen are not fictional projects. They are all entering pre-development stages. So these are not fictional projects.
So this is the residential, it's a combination of the residential construction and operations. We separate those two because the operations of a business economic impact is different than that of residential construction, which usually happens over the life of the construction of the project. There is minimal recurring economic impact over residential construction. So then we broke that out for Eric in these two slides here, showing the residential construction impact. As the housing rehabilitation and development goes on, we're projecting an economic impact of just around this, of $67 million, with more than 1,000 jobs and $7 million of tax revenue. And these are based on multipliers that are provided by the National Homeowners Association Development Board. And then the annual operations, again, comes down to the square footage that we were provided. We estimate the number of direct jobs that would create in this type of establishment, and then run that through the standard multipliers to develop the indirect and the induced economic impact. So, for example, with the University Square District Mixed-Use Project 2, we're estimating $22 million with 179 employees, direct and indirect and induced. And all three of these projects together, $183 million, about 1,400 employees with $9 million of tax revenue generated by University Park. Now, that's really all we have as far as the economic impact numbers, and we will have an opportunity for questions and answers later. I actually brought with me Paul Umbach, the president and founder of Tripp Umbach as well, so he can help maybe answer some questions too. And Beth will be around with a handheld mic because they are taping and filming this, so she'll be around with the mic.
Are you able to share what the projects are so far? What details?
I don't have the specific details of that, and at this point, I would definitely defer to Eric on that.
We're just not in a position to share it publicly yet, but I would just say that the projects are in the works, and look for something in the not too distant future related to an announcement.
Thank you.
Eric?
Yes.
Is there any way to delineate old-time residents who will be choosing to live in this neighborhood and the district area or the other areas? Is there any way to do any numbers to get an idea of how many additional people will be living in this community?
I think, let me run through this presentation.
Okay.
I think it'll help answer some of those questions.
Okay.
So we'll come back and have more questions. So the second part of the study has been about looking to really determine if successful economic redevelopment is possible in University Park. Now, this information was prepared by Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. Again, one of the world's best. They measure impacts, modeling in entire countries. China, they're doing Afghanistan's sort of potential redevelopment path forward with the United States government. So what we wanted to do is talk about excuse me, the urban alternative, because our message is not about convincing an individual to pack up from the suburbs and move to the city. That's point number one. Point number two is we're trying to create an alternative within the core of the city that provides a place for people who want the urban experience. I often say this, and heard me say it earlier today. We have multiple choices in this country. You can be Republican, Democrat, drink Coke or Pepsi, go to Walmart, Target, McDonald's, Burger King. When it comes to the housing standard, it's a dominant drive model. Get in your car and drive, drive, drive. So what we're saying is we want to target and capture that portion of the population that's looking for the urban experience and build on the attraction of the anchor institutions. We're surrounded by thousands of employees, but on average, less than 6% of the people at the institutions we talk about live in this community. We think there's a hidden market there. We're working with the Taylor Institute to do a series of surveys to really get at what that need is. So this presentation is about letting people know that this stuff is possible. Because,
I'm sorry, if you can flip your left.
this one?
Thank you.
Is that right? Okay. So most tales you hear about recent history in Akron is one of decline. You talk to most people, population is dropping. You should be concerned, right? Unemployment remains high. So the traditional story you hear, Rust Belt City, and by the way, Akron is not listed as a legacy Rust Belt city. Do the research, go to Brookings, CEOs of cities, and search. You will not find Akron listed in the categories of Cleveland, Youngstown, Toledo, Detroit. We are not considered a legacy city. Akron has been removed out of that category, in particular due to the work of the city, the county, the University of Akron, and the anchor institutions. So we're not in that category. But the perception that you hear most of the time is, oh, it's declining. Oh, the core is bad, right? That's the standard that you basically hear. And what we're saying is the fact that average wages are rising in Akron is actually ignored. So again, this is about building the analytics to support our plan. And this information that we have, we probably got you guys' tax returns if you live in Akron. We've got all of the data. So this is real information, Bureau of Economic Analysis, tax returns, the whole 9 yards. So what we're saying is this fact that the average wage per job is ignored. You see, the compound annual growth rate. You see what's happening. But again, it's ignored because truth is there's no focus on the core. The predominant focus has been in the suburbs. At the same time, healthcare is on the rise, while other sort of industries are stabilizing and not growing as fast. So the idea that healthcare continues to rise in the spinoff that relates to that. Here's the thing here, and the fact that Akron's economy, MSA level, is larger than some countries. So we've got an economy here. It remains substantial purchasing power, larger than Panama's economy, larger than Jamaica's economy. So the fact that we have these strong components in Akron is hidden because the normal sort of lingo is it's a declining city, population is gone.
Is this greater Akron or city?
It's MSA, right? Because 1% of the MSA population moves on an annual basis. So sort of hidden fact. So also overlooked is the average household incomes are higher than assumed, right? So we're looking at 46% of all households make more than $50K a year. Look at the graph. It's a huge population with the income to support purchasing power. In absolute numbers, over 131,000 households make more than $50,000 a year. So we're trying to paint the story, paint the picture, because if you take Akron within the context of Northeast Ohio, you can't separate it. You cannot separate it. So we got Northeast Ohio, in its ranking of metropolitan regions, we fall somewhere in the 38, 40 out of the top 50, whatever the number is. And our challenge is to spin Akron off and say, look at the good things that are happening in Akron that we can profile and attract dollars and investment to the area. For example, a $130,000 residence in Akron is affordable to nearly 75,000 households, right? It's huge because our approach is about trying to identify the true housing market and hit the right price points. You see the convergence point here. So we believe housing at that price point, because the idea is how do we catalyze investment to start to not only draw people in the city, but allow more people to purchase homes. So $130,000 residence. Retail spending is also large, giving the 13 billion wages in the MSA. You see sort of the suburbs. You basically see the city of Akron, and this is really University Park. We don't look at this in isolation of just saying the core. We tend to look at the whole entire component, 13 billion in wages in this area. Yet, if you want your basic services, for the most part, you have to drive outside of the city. If you want to find me 6:30 every morning, I'm in Cuyahoga Falls at Starbucks. because I got to drive outside of University Park, so that's where you can find it. I hate doing that, by the way. Commercial space demand in MSA is also large. The idea that you see basically the suburbs, you see the city, you see University Park. As a function of employment, the idea that the anchors continue to spin off and produce, the demand for increased commercial possibilities lie within the area. Now, this is my favorite one. This is my favorite one. Hospitality demand is higher than assumed. Given the downtown conventions, medical facilities, and university events held annually, yet we are devoid of hotels in the core. Right? We cannot be a legitimate city without having hotels in the core. Now, through the help of the University of Akron, SUMA, Convention Center, we're able to really get at the true numbers of what's needed in the hotel market here. Projected at a 70% demand. This is basically what you see in terms of the hotel nights demanded by primary source. University of Akron's got 9 convocations a year. I'm still trying to figure out where all of the football players, the basketball players, the soccer players, everybody's outside the core because we don't have anything in the core for them to enjoy. The idea is how do we capture that and bring that back into the core. And a lot of this information, in particular, University of Akron was tremendous in helping us collect a lot of this data as we went along. So we have data, we have interviews to support information. Resident students who don't live on campus, also a very large population here. We've got a lot of sort of substandard housing that we see as critical to stabilizing not only for residents but for students seeking a quality of life place to live within University Park and beyond. So this demand model was basically created using residential inputs, population growth, household formation rates, retail inputs, you see population, household number, income, commercial inputs, population, employment, hospitality, student, beds. What's behind this is a functioning model that we can plug in the variables to adjust as we work through the plan. So it's a very comprehensive model that is basically starting to show that UPA's total development plan is achievable under reasonable growth rates. So when we analyze expected impacts, basically these trends really emerge. Economic trends return to trend growth in the broader national economy. The one that I tend to really focus on is this sector here, which I would call really a competitive advantage. Aging real estate supply, some people look at that as a negative. I would say it's a positive. Increasing user demand for modern facilities. Again, despite all of the anchors and everything, we're absent the modern facilities. Lack of social interaction locations for students, faculty, researchers within the core. Universities addressing this issue and limited competition. So we also see this movement to the city and this disillusion with the suburbs as something that we're really seeking to capitalize on. So when we start to break this down, this is what excites me. These are ultra-conservative numbers. We have 3 scenarios taking the plan. David showed you the overall sort of numbers. When we plug in the models using, you see the conservative, moderate, and aggressive. UPA, we are focusing our efforts here. That's less than a percentage point. So we're saying the MSA population growth, our plan reflects this minimal number. The household growth rate, this number. Income, this number. Employment, that number. That's like less than 1%. Even when you get into the moderate scenarios, you see how low the numbers are. These are not astronomical growth numbers to say that UPA is on planet whatever, just making this stuff up. So again, ultra conservative numbers related to where we see placing the emphasis on this plan. So then we basically start to assume that if we bring well-priced units online in the right price point, not developers coming into UPA looking to create $300,000, $400,000, $250,000 units because they need to get their 12, 13% out of a real estate deal. That's not where we're going. We need to hit this type of number to catalyze the development within University Park. Well located, walkable, near city center amenities. So let's not do this. Take up all the land for parking. Let's try and go vertical and create an urban context. Attractively designed, modern, clean, offering retail, green spaces as part of the total overall package. Well marketed. It shouldn't be a problem for us to market this. We got the University of Akron, we got SUMA, we got Children's, we got the city, we got the county, we got the chamber, we got downtown. We've got everybody sort of as a part of this that will help us basically market this. But the key to this thing will be well-priced residential units. So, you see basically the average capture rates. So on the residential side, that 0.78 percentage point is what we need to capture. The retail capture rate, a little over 2%, and the commercial capture rate about 3.23%. Again, on the sort of moderate side, more or less on the conservative, aggressive side. And again, we're focusing our efforts here with the hopes that the numbers are so conservative that this is shaping up to be a great piece. So when we originally looked at the plan, we calculated this number first. The original number came out with these numbers. These numbers look huge, but when you break them down over 2030, the numbers are it's not a lot. So when we finally looked at the plan, we really sort of came together on the conservative side. We had a developer in from Milwaukee as a part of the Milwaukee sort of leadership visit we had. He studied the model, he ran the numbers, it's like, wow, this makes sense. This is doable. You start to break this down, this is probably 300 units of housing a year. That's what that number would really break down to. So this is really the conservative side. We're basically working on over 2012, 2030. And what we didn't mention is the plan goes from 2012 to 2030, but the first projects up are 2012 to 2016, because you can't sustain the community's belief if you're going to try and say we got a plan in 2030 without having immediate projects within the first 3 to 4 years of the plan. So again, conservative scenario is basically where we are focusing. So what we're projecting, UPA's full development plan is feasible as it builds on existing trends to offer something new to Akron, right? And sort of, you see the trends going here, return to economic growth nationally, locally, meeting the unmet student, residential, employee, retail, entertainment needs, expansion of biotech, anchor institutions, live workspace, young professional empty nesters, attraction of families, and anchor institution employees. So offering products like flats for retiring boomers that would want the urban experience, right? Creating housing at a price point that an assistant professor that may make $45,000, $50,000 a year for his or her family. Again, housing at the right price point. 2012, 2030 takes us all the way through. So, assuming continued moderate economic recovery, focus on the core city advantages, there's an underlying demand that supports the UPA development plan. So, we look at these numbers, they are not out of range, it's definitely doable, and the message we're trying to convey is that not only the economic impact, but the overall demand model really shows that we have something unique here to build on in Akron, focusing on the core. And I think that may be the last slide, and we'll take some questions.
Thank you for coming. And I think the first note that gained applause from your presentation was the idea that I don't need this microphone.
That's true.
The idea that you brought to the table was that your KU development firm, they could choose anywhere in the world to develop real estate, and they've chosen to come to this city of the future. And this city of the future really is built around our knowledge center right here at the university. I really feel that you've hit the nail on the head with regards to the method by which a plan can be implemented. And that is focusing on the mix of uses built around the campus activities, the focus on a change of an awareness that Akron has always been a center for invention and innovation. And as we embrace our core discipline of mechanical and chemical engineering, we have found a home that folks from around the world want to come and invest in. And I really want to celebrate your attention and astute draw that has really brought this great group to our city. Thank you.
All right, appreciate that. Yep. Let me just address the KUD selection of Akron. You know, development companies of that type of magnitude, you know, they build stadiums. They actually, the Japanese nuclear reactor that went down, they're actually rebuilding that. This is a very prolific group, and the reason they really chose Akron was because of the plan. Secondarily, it was because their experience with, you know, talking to people like Tony O'Leary, talking to the mayor, Russ Pry, Tom Strauss, Vince McCorkle, Dr. Parenza. What they basically noticed was, here you have a group of people that are really not disconnected from each other. They have the ability to move relatively fast. Unlike some cities, which I have worked in, it is hard to get people to come together. In this town, you don't have to do that. So the combination of the plan and the vision that linked all the pieces together, because communities won't take the time to do this. They would say, hey, give me development, you know, hey, let me call Marco, give me a subsidy, you know, do a project, right? People won't take the time to do it. So KUD's recognition of what we have here in terms of the collaboration, the ability to move relatively fast, this cohesion of leadership backed by a master plan that makes sense is the reason why they really chose Akron. It was the reason why the Wall Street Journal wrote a piece about our relationship with KUD. It's the reason why Atlantic Cities picked up the story. That's the reason why across the country people are starting to pay attention to what's going on here. So make no mistake about it, it's about competition. Some people don't believe, but that's fine. That's part of the democratic process. There will be naysayers. We just have to prove that this is the real deal. The only thing I would ask the people is to give us an opportunity to really show you that this is the real deal. We are not selling a false promise, nor is it a false plan, because we put in place a development entity to get us across the goal line. And I'll be honest with you guys, if we didn't have KUD, there's no way I can be standing up here, you know, talking about a plan, because we wouldn't have the horsepower to get us, you know, to where we need to go. You may see a smaller group at UPA supported by its board, but what you don't see is the piece that's behind us that's got the financial wherewithal to actually help us. Our challenge is to keep pace with these guys. I mean, these guys are fast. They want to get this stuff in the ground. You know, our challenge is to keep pace with these guys. So,
thank you. My name is Joe McDonald. I'm one of your target population. I moved to Akron 3 months ago from Washington, D.C., and I live and work in University Park.
yes.
I will tell you that I had an extraordinarily difficult time finding an apartment to rent, and I don't see in your model where you address rental housing for young professionals that is not restricted to students. I took the only apartment I could find, and that's where I live. How do you plan to address that? What is the breakdown between rental housing at the market rate for young professionals and ownership-based housing?
Actually, the bulk of our housing is not student-focused. The majority of our housing is regular individual focus, right? Multifamily units, again, at the right price point. We will do some student housing, teaming up with one of our partners, you know, to sort of help satisfy that need. But our mission is to create a diverse community that's got a series of housing stock users, retiring baby boomers, young professionals. So our focus is not necessarily just student housing. Our challenge is, and I can tell you, I'm not going to talk about it here, but we are looking at bringing online some multifamily units that would address your need within University Park. So I would say it's coming, it's on the way, but that's part of the focus. And I live in University Park, by the way. I'm one of those people, and I often tell people, you would be what I call one or two categories, risk oblivious or risk aware. You're probably risk aware, sort of like me. You don't have an issue living in a community that's starting to bring itself up. So long and short of it is, that's really our target population.
I am a faculty member here, so I guess I'm vested in University Park Alliance. One of the things that you must work on, which seems to be missing, is to work on the crime rate. None of these dreams will come true, because I work with the students, I work with the faculty. That's the elephant in the room, and it's not there. And so if you are investing these huge resources, please put pennies into the crime rate.
I'll just say that we're attacking the elephant. So I would just say that there's two things we want to do. We want to recognize the safety issue and address it appropriately, and in doing so, send a message that we're trying to create a community that's positioning itself for investment. So I'll just say to you today that in the coming week or two, you'll hear something about that.
Cameras everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's something that we're working on, yeah. Without giving away the issue, it's something that we're working on. We do recognize that. But remember this too, as development takes off and things start to change, more people on the streets, more presence, new to tell you, that's a huge thing that's critical to basically what we're doing.
Hi, my name is Ned Kendall. I work with Ohio Edison here in Akron, and one of the cultural differences you see between Cleveland and Akron is there's such a fine, diverse group of restaurants in the Cleveland area, and I think that's one thing that Akron can't really go to bat with Cleveland. And I know there's a lot of commercial space that's in your plan, and I was just wondering how many restaurants are included in that commercial space.
Yeah, I can tell you that restaurant retail is critical to what we're doing. So I'm just going to pull back up the original slide and sort of show you what the thoughts are. I'm just going to put this one back on the screen. When we look at retail, we have three distinct corridors here: University Square, Crossroads, and Main Street. Three non-competing areas, right? What happens here is by creating the best university destination we can possibly create that supports what the University of Akron has already done. So if there's retail, there's restaurants, look for the focus along Exchange. Here is more neighborhood-centered in terms of bringing to bear on this corridor the absence of a lot of the services that do not exist here. Main Street, would be more entertainment destination here. Part of the challenge is how do we create and further incubate more organic type restaurants. So what we want to be mindful of, we won't turn them down, but we're not necessarily looking for chains. We don't need the TGI Fridays. Is that the TGI Fridays? Yeah. Someone called me last week and told me the best we can do in Akron is a Denny's. That this would never work. Oh, I'm serious. One of the leading retail guys, but he had his own interests because he was trying to promote Denny's. Give us all the land for Denny's. But to answer your question, that whole notion of Retail is huge in terms of what we do. And let me tell you why. I live somewhere over, I live at Spicer Village. And I kid you not, I'm distraught, man. I got to drive every single day. I'm going out this way, or I'm making my way this way to go out that way. The formula doesn't work. We can have the best bio-educational institutions, but if you don't have the place, it's not going to work. Part of our challenge, though, is when you talk to retailers, to be straight honest with you, they're lazy because it's hard work to do retail in the core versus just having a greenfield site in the suburbs where you just build a little track, set up a box, get a restaurant in there. That's like first-year graduate school, right? But the issue for us is setting the framework that will get the, it's there. The McDonald's over here, you go to McDonald's, I mean, they can't keep pace because there's nowhere else to eat, you know? I was at the doctor last week, man, with heart hurting, chest hurting, but, you know, it's just to answer your question, long and short of it, yes, that's going to be huge in terms of what we do.
Eric, with respect to the economic development information, are there ways for smaller organizations to catch a draft from the information and do some smaller things that would create economies of scale, make it a little more affordable for smaller organizations to get in the slipstream of this study and
oh, absolutely.
Information?
Yeah, absolutely. Any studies that we do, any information we have, you know, this is built for the community. It's not just for University Park. Any of you guys in here, you know, that's working on something, you think this information benefits you, that was the reason behind putting this together, that this information is basically for everybody. The video that we had developed, that's for everybody. Economic impact studies, it's for everybody. The demand model will help people out, you know, like Tony Tropy's looking at a couple of things. It's designed for everybody. So, you know, all you have to do is make a request to us and we'll put something together for you. Because what we recognize is that this doesn't happen with UPA alone. And I'll tell you guys this, the measure of success is just not the UPA projects. It's when investors follow behind us and recognize that this is a great place to invest, that projects from outsiders or other people in town start to do more things. So, absolutely.
Eric, you talked early on about the neighborhoods. You've got the Leggett neighborhood, the Mason, and Upson Jewett. And you talked about kind of a poor state of housing. What about that? Is there something to make that better? Is there something in the plans for that?
Absolutely. This is what I love about this plan. One of the best anchors to build around are schools. So here we sit in University Park with two significant investments, what I view as an achievement by the citizens in this town, you know, voting a portion of the income tax to pay to rebuild schools. So the key is these circles really represent, I think we're drawing, what are we drawing, 2.5 blocks around the schools, Rachel? Yeah, it's about a 2.5 block radius around the schools. With the help of Braun and Steidel, we now know every single property status around these schools, which ones should be rehabbed, which ones should be taken down and brought back up, right? So the intent is to the 2.5 block radius, full-scale rehabilitation and infill development. Infill development reflecting bringing back what was there before. The home of the 21st century, according to USA Today back in October 2011, is a detached garage, 1,800 square foot home, porches in the front. It's almost a traditional Akron home. There's no need to tear them down. Some you have to take down, but the idea would be stabilization and stabilizing the neighborhoods. That's really the gist of it. This doesn't work. Tony O'Leary will tell you, this doesn't work. All of this doesn't work if we don't focus here. You know, we did a model block up here. We did 10 homes. It was like 10 homes, Beth, right? We did 10 homes, totally rehabbed, with rebuilding together to basically show you what a rehab neighborhood in University Park would basically look like. So, and besides, people are not going anywhere. I don't see people picking up and saying, hey, I'm moving down to Cleveland or wherever. I don't see it happening. Because remember, the new economy is about authentic places. It's not like, you know, creating replicas of other things that you see that may necessarily just be brand new. but it's how you create a unique sense of place. So you don't have to go in. The beauty of Akron neighborhoods are they're not like destroyed neighborhoods. The sort of tree-lined streets are still there. The sidewalks are pretty much intact. You just may have some issues with some of the houses, but I'll plant trees all over this thing. Next time you see this, it'll be covered with trees. That's what I would do.
Hi, my name is Amber Drum. My parents, Don and Lisa Drum, have owned and operated a gallery in this neighborhood for over 45 years. So I guess you can say we are adverse to risk, but we've seen the neighborhood and its changes, and we're here to stay. But my question is this: do you see the future development having more of a walking community or a drive-to destination? Because personally, once the elephant's out of the room, I would love to see more of a walking community, sort of reflecting what's happening on campus, outside of campus.
Absolutely. We envision a walkable, urban, dense community. That's what we envision, where this is basically, it's all walkable. Excuse me. So in our design, we're not emphasizing the car. Everything will, push the car sort of in the background. So we're trying to create any buildings would have sort of retail sort of at the bottom, or some sort of use, cafes, like a Don Drum Cafe or something like that, in one of the developments. So it's all about walkable community. And I can tell you now, the projects we have, performers have been run, all of the projects basically work. Part of our issue is, creating a design that will give us the walkability that we're basically looking for. Even within the neighborhoods. I'm not talking about just on the edges of Exchange, but how do you sort of penetrate in here and create, like neighborhood sort of destination type places. This is hard work. I make it sound easy, but this stuff is hard.
Eric, I saw a lot of numbers of employment and residents. Are there any quality of life measures that you're throwing in?
Yeah, one thing I didn't mention about us is that we're funded by night, and what comes along with our night dollars is an overall objective that has indicators associated with them. So some of those indicators we've been working on are things like reduction in crime, increase in property values, number of new and or rehab units coming online, the increased level of citizen engagement, the infusion of missing elements like business incubators, which may apply itself across retail, bio innovation type work, and creative space. So we've got these indicators that will be tracked along the plan. So with Knight, we're working with Knight to sort of track, beginning in 12, all of these different indicators. So yearly, we will be able to have a report card, a scorecard, showing you basically the progress on those indicators, right? So the quality of life issues, open space is a huge part of what we're basically doing throughout the plan.
Hi, I'm a real estate broker, and I get a lot of people that want to invest in Akron, but I don't get anybody that wants to buy in the Mason School District or the Leggett or the Upson areas. Why should I tell them they should invest there? And is there any economic development tool that you're going to use to entice investors to buy properties in these neighborhoods and to rehab them?
Well, what I would say is that my comment about let me talk about some of the tools we're going to introduce in 2013. We're going to introduce home buyer assistance at a decent rate. But more importantly, we're going to offer housing rehabilitation assistance for existing and rental units within University Park. So we're going to say to existing owners, again, going back to my night objective, our objective would be to rehabilitate a certain number of homes. So the idea that we offer rehab assistance and first-time home buyer, not first time, but home buyer assistance. That's two tools we're going to basically use. More importantly, I would just say that, we're not looking to give away the farm to attract people to live in University Park. We're looking for people like my next door neighbor who's a surgeon. You know, his wife is an attorney. I go through Spicer Village. You know, I mean, these people are there because they want to be in the neighborhood, and that's the type of people we're actually going after, to put it sort of mildly. So tools like, again, rehab assistance, home buyer assistance is basically what we're going to be offering. And I can tell you now, prices at the right price point will sell. So imagine a $130,000 house, the $15,000 home buyer assistance, and your down payment assistance that comes along with that. We believe we can knock down a well-quality built home with no subsidy, and I've done it before in multiple cities, at less than $100,000. So that is something that, you know, but we're not going to come out with a product that will be out of the range of people within the city of Akron. It's a huge mistake to do that. Again, we tend to focus on risk adverse. We think the schools got to be supreme, the streets got to be totally clean, it can't be any crime. That's how redevelopment efforts fail across the country, because you tend to focus on that. And private developers will tell you, I can't do that because there's no money to be made. We need a mission-based infusion, which is UPA's objective, to move this forward. And then later on, we see more private coming online towards the end.
Good evening, everybody. This is Paul Umbach. Most of the people in the room were born in the 20th century. It's a young group, but most of you were born in the 20th century. I would even say all of us were born in the 20th century. And if we go look at 2030, the average age of the people that are going to be living in the district were going to be born from 1990 to 2000. There'll be a lot of people, probably as many as half of the people that were born in the 21st century. And when I was here at the University of Akron Graduate School in 1984, I aspired to live in a 2-bedroom townhouse with a loft in Fairlawn. And the only thing I could think about was getting out of Channelwood Village and living in a place between here and Cleveland, because I had a job in downtown Cleveland. And I aspired to drive to downtown Cleveland. My 20-year-old kids aspire not to have a car. They aspire not to ever live in a suburb or in a cul-de-sac. They aspire only to live where there's a coffee bar to walk to. You ask about qualitative things, the number of coffee bars per capita. And I owned a coffee bar in our town and lost money every year for 4 years. So I'm not saying coffee bars are economic impact drivers. But the presence of coffee bars for my kids are going to be very important. And I just wanted to say to everybody tonight that we have to look through the eyes, not of us, but the eyes of 21st century folks. And boy, are they going to love the University Park. And boy, they're going to love and not aspire to living in the suburbs. So that's a comment I wanted to share with you.
Well, as an aging professional, I've reached that platinum status now. We've gone beyond gold. We hit 500,000, now we're off to 1 million. And so platinum is the color. It's not gray. Don't tell me about gray. I want to go platinum. My goal is to live in a place that I don't need a car. I didn't have to use my car this week. I didn't have to use it this month. How cool am I? You know, I want to be the envy of all my neighbors living at that mixed-use crossroads of commerce and culture. That is the key to building a city of the future. And I think Eric and his team are embarked on this can-do, will-do, done solution. So whose phone is ringing in my background here?
Some
I like it.
Eviction of the building.
Bring it on, folks, because we're doing it. Thanks, Eric.
All right, thanks, Tony. Just in conclusion, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out and to give David a round of applause for his presentation. So, you know, again, I'm going to also say to you guys to join us for our upcoming speaker series. Our next presenter will be Wendy Holmes. On the board, Wendy is one of the prolific developers of arts, live, workspace in the country. She will present Building a Vibrant Community, Artists Live Workspace as a Redevelopment Catalyst on February 29th. And Steve Davies, Senior Vice President of Project Public Spaces in New York, will also present Healthy Food Hubs, Eliminate Food Deserts, and supporting local economies on March 28th. So again, thank you for coming out and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Yeah.